I didn't notice the envelope at first. Dr. Patel had finished listening to my heart, the way he always does, 2 careful beats beneath his calm, then the soft click of his pen. We traded weather talk and he told me my labs looked strong. "Plenty of miles left in you, Elaine," he said, eyes kind and a shade too steady, like he was holding something back. When I reached for my tote, his hand moved polite, quick, and later I'd replay that small movement a dozen times, trying to name the feeling that ran through me. Not fear, not yet. Something like the hush before a summer storm. I didn't open the envelope in the office. I said goodbye, thanked the nurse for the lemon candy she always leaves in a blue bowl, and took the stairs down to the parking lot, the one that faces the mountains if you look past the HVAC units and the cigarette pail. Asheville was doing its soft morning thing, fog clinging to the ridgelines, air smelling like rain and coffee. I breathed in, ready to go home, ready to fold the doctor's good news into a quiet afternoon. Then I saw them. Miles was leaning against Tiffany's SUV, arms crossed in a way that meant he wanted to look relaxed and could not, no matter how he arranged himself. Tiffany's mouth was moving fast. She had that look she saves for people she thinks she owns. Chin lifted, smile, pressed thin. A phone cupped to her shoulder while she half whispered, "Yes, yes. Just get the forms ready." When they noticed me, they straightened in tandem, as if called to attention. A picture of concern. My family, or what passes for it when people are performing for the world. I waved, polite, kept walking. I could feel the envelope now, a small weight against the canvas of my tote, warm where my elbow held it. I didn't take it out until I was sitting in my car, doors locked, keys in the ignition, the radio making that little static sigh it makes before it finds a station. The envelope was cream linen, sealed with a purple wax circle, impressed with lavender sprigs. Someone had taken time. I slid a fingernail under the seal and unfolded a single sheet, handwritten in a tidy, slanted script I recognized from years of prescriptions and holiday cards. "Do not return home." That's all it said on the first line. Below it, a little more. "Call me when you're somewhere safe. There are conversations happening about your capacity. You need time, space, and proof. N.P." I read it twice, slowly, while my scalp prickled like I'd stepped into cold water. You don't work decades as an ICU nurse without learning how to sort panic from information. Panic makes you small. Information makes you steady. I set the letter on my knee and counted my breaths. 4 in, 6 out. When I looked up, Tiffany was watching me in the side mirror, smile wide, fingers to her chest like she'd just remembered a kindness she meant to perform. Miles knocked on my window. "You okay, Elaine? We were just saying how we could swing by later, help with the pantry, maybe fix that sticky back door." His voice was light, the way people sound when they've already made a decision and they're leading you to it. "I'm fine," I said, rolling the window down an inch. "Doctor says I'm in good shape." "Wonderful," Tiffany chimed, stepping closer. "Actually, we were thinking, it's probably time to schedule that little wellness assessment. Nothing big, friendly stuff, just to be safe." There was that word friendly, the one people use before they back you toward a paper you don't understand. "I've got an errand," I told them. "I'll call you later." I drove to the diner up on Merrimon where the coffee is strong and the booths swallow people who need a minute. I took the corner seat, ordered eggs I didn't plan to eat, and unfolded the letter again, flattening the crease with my palm. "Proof," he'd written. Not anger, not confrontation. Proof. It tasted like steel in my mouth, and I found I liked the taste. I opened my wallet and checked the cards. The emergency cash I keep tucked under the old photo of my husband sanding a cherrywood table on the porch. Still there. I texted Ruth at the bank. "Can I swing by? Quick question about account security." She replied with a thumbs up and a time. "I wish I could tell you," I cried, "that I let the hurt land, that I let myself mourn the version of family I kept polishing in my head. But what I felt in that booth was something quieter and far more useful. Alignment. Like a train finally on the track it was supposed to take. I folded the letter and slid it into the inside pocket of my tote, the one I use for things that matter. Passports, deeds, photographs you don't lend. I paid in cash and left a tip that made the waitress blink. Outside, the air had that after-rain brightness that makes everything look factual. I could see the whole day stretching in front of me. The bank, a room somewhere, not my house, a cheap notebook to start a ledger, a call to Dr. Patel from a borrowed phone. I put my hand on the tote and felt the edge of the paper through the canvas, a square of certainty. If they needed my signature tonight, they'd have to find me first, and before they found me, they'd meet my paper trail. Ruth met me at the side door the way church friends do when the weather turns and you don't have the right coat hand on my elbow, eyes scanning the lobby like she could part the air for me. "You picked a good time," she said, ushering me past the line. "System's quiet. Tell me what you need and I'll make the computer behave." I told her only the shape of it. Not names, not accusations, just that a doctor I trusted had asked me to take a breath before returning to routine. Ruth nodded once like that was enough. She tapped a few keys, the screen casting numbers across her glasses. "There's a pending request," she said, voice low. "A co-signer ad and a mailing address correction. Not approved. Not even close. Someone phoned it in yesterday and tried to sweet-talk the newer teller with your birth date and the last 4 wrong order." She looked at me over the rims. "Also asked about a durable POA form, wanted to email it to your niece." "Elaine, you don't have a niece." My throat did that dry click. "I do not." "I didn't release a thing," Ruth went on. "We have a callback rule for this very reason. If it's you, we call you on the number on file. If it's not you, we still call you. You didn't answer because we didn't call, because I put a hold and a note to route to me only." She slid a small pad across the desk. "If you want, we can add a verbal password right now. One you'd never put on Facebook or in a Christmas letter." "All right," I said, and wrote a word that only my husband ever used for the way I take my tea. Ruth set it in the system and printed something slim. "Activity log," she said. "Times, extensions, what was asked. It's dull until it isn't. Keep it. Also, I'm marking all changes as in-person only, with ID. If anyone calls pretending to be you, they'll meet my switchboard first." She softened. "Do you have somewhere safe to be tonight?" "I will within the hour." She reached for my hand. "Then go do that. Call me from a calm place, and we'll go over your accounts one by one. You're not alone in this." "Is like that. It is a steadying thing, being told you're not alone by someone with a login that can lock a gate." I didn't drive home. I drove north to a motor court with painted doors and clean gravel, where the clerk keeps a jar of peppermints and a stack of maps nobody uses anymore. I paid for 3 nights, cash. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and the tail end of someone's cologne. I set my tote on the little round table and pulled out the cream envelope, the wax seal now resting like a bruise against the paper. I pressed it flat and left it there while I walked to the pharmacy. You know the aisle that fixes lives for under $20? That's where I went. A college-ruled notebook with faint blue squares, a dark pen that doesn't smudge, a manila folder, a cheap prepaid flip phone, and a fat roll of tape. Back in the room, I wrote Boundary Ledger on the first page and taped the letter inside the cover so it would open like a bell every time I began. Then I drew 4 columns: when, who, what, evidence. The page weighted the way a field does quiet, possible. Entry 1. Today, 10:14 M-Bank, Ruth Delgado. Pending cosigner request. Attempted address change. POA inquiry by caller claiming to be me. Not approved. Verbal password added. In-person changes only. Evidence. Printed activity log. Ruth's note. Name of teller who routed calls to her. Entry 2. Today, 11:32 a.m. Motel check-in. Paid cash, 3 nights. Room number, clerk name, receipt taped below. I could hear the afternoon sloping toward evening, tires on wet pavement, distant freight like a low throat clearing. The house I did not return to sat where it always sits, quiet behind its trees, a door that has learned the shape of my keys. I missed it. I missed the way the porch boards remember my weight. But the ledger on the table in front of me made a different sound, paper against paper, a future organizing itself. I turned on the little phone, stored Ruth's number, and typed Dr. Patel's initials with a reminder to call from somewhere quiet at dusk. I wrote 3 rules on the inside cover. No surprises by phone, no signatures without witnesses, no conversations without notes. Then, because I needed something that tasted like courage, I underlined the first rule twice. By nightfall, the house would still be quiet, but my ledger would be loud enough to answer for me. They called it a family dinner, which in church language means potluck casseroles and the same 3 pies everyone swears are different. Tiffany texted like, "Nothing was strange, lots of hearts, and a can't wait to see you." As if we were about to trade recipes and not whatever we were really doing. I told myself to go, because disappearing entirely only feeds other people's stories. Also, I wanted eyes on them in a place with witnesses and coffee. The fellowship hall smelled like brewed sundaes and starch. Miles waved too big, the way you wave when you're rehearsing sincerity. Tiffany floated over with her hostess smile, the one that uses all teeth and none of the muscles around her eyes. "Elaine, you look wonderful," she sang, slipping her hand around my shoulder the way salespeople guide you toward the expensive shelves. "I invited a friend from work just to say hello. She's so sweet, you'll love her. It's not a teacher." Her friend was waiting by the lemonade, a woman in scrubs with a clipboard and a sticker that said, "Hello, my name is Lana." She had the pleasant, neutral face of someone taught to be agreeable for a living. When she said the word assessment, it landed with a tiny thud in my chest, not because I was afraid of questions, but because I recognized the script. Start friendly, ask leading, write conclusions that sound like kindness, and read like custody. "Is this about my capacity?" I asked, not loud, not a challenge, just a question shaped like a door I could close if needed. "Oh goodness, no," Tiffany laughed, and the laugh had glitter in it. "It's just wellness. Lana helps our clients all the time. We care about you, don't we, Miles?" Miles stared very hard at the potato salad. "We do," he said softly, like the words were heavier than he'd expected. I touched the inside pocket of my cardigan where I'd tucked the cream linen envelope, the wax seal smooth under my fingertips. I thought of Dr. Patel's handwriting and the way the word proof steadies a person. "I don't do surprise tests," I said, smiling because I actually meant it kindly. "If there's a form, I review it at home with my lawyer. If there's a conversation, I record it. Those are my rules." Lana blinked, then nodded, almost grateful to be told what would happen. "We can schedule," she said. "Whatever is comfortable." Across the room, Harper from the night shift, she waits tables 2 blocks from my bank, was topping off water pitchers. We know each other in that community way, where you learn a person's order before you learn their last name. She slipped by me with a glance that said she was watching the room the way servers do, 10 feet ahead, 3 steps to the side. On her next pass, she muttered, "You want company to your car later?" And I felt myself exhale. A few minutes later, I saw it. Not a movie moment, a small, ordinary transaction between people used to doing small, ordinary things they hope no one notices. Tiffany leaned toward Lana, words hidden behind a smile. There was a white envelope, thin enough to belong to a church office, thick enough to be worth saying yes to. The way Lana's eyes dropped, then lifted, told the rest. I took out my phone. "I'm recording," I said, still soft, still kind. "This is not a confrontation. It's a memory aid. Today is Thursday, and I'm here at the church hall. If anyone has paperwork for me, please hand it over. Otherwise, we can schedule through my attorney." The room shifted the way rooms do when someone takes a step out of the script. A few heads turned. Tiffany's smile trembled, then stabilized. "Elaine," she said, breathy, "this is so embarrassing. We were only trying to help. You've been different. We worry. We love you." "Love me scheduled," I said. "Love me documented. That's how I accept care now." She put her hand to her chest, eyes glossy. "I cannot believe you think we'd ever—" "Then you won't mind if I leave," I answered, picking up my tote. "We can all be comfortable tomorrow, when things have names." On my way past the lemonade table, Harper caught my sleeve with 2 fingers, quick and quiet. "Got it," she whispered. "Audio's bad in here, but the parking lot is honest." Outside, the evening had cooled into something clear and factual. I walked to my car with my tote snug against my side, the linen envelope a square of calm under my palm. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, like I'd managed to keep my feet on a moving floor. When I turned the engine over, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We can do the assessment at your house tonight. Friendly, quick. I smiled and put the phone face down on the passenger seat. Someone had just been paid to write me into a story. They were not going to like the ending. Ava didn't waste my time or my courage. She shook my hand like an equal, not a case, and slid a legal pad across the desk. "You don't have to convince me you're sane," she said. "You only have to show me what happened." That sentence loosened something in my chest I didn't know I'd been bracing. We started with what Ruth had printed. The call attempts, the pending cosigner ad, the address correction, the note about someone asking for POA forms to be emailed to a niece I don't have. Ava read like a mechanic listens to an engine head tilted, pencil tapping an invisible beat. "Good," she said. "Banks leave footprints. We'll keep them walking." She phoned Ruth from her office line, introduced herself, and asked for the official activity log under my written authorization. Ruth faxed it within 10 minutes. Bless that woman. Then Ava drew 3 boxes on her pad and wrote in block letters, "Calm, collect, confirm." "This is what we do when they try to herd you into friendly paperwork," she told me. "Calm buys you time, collect puts you on the record, confirm forces them into specifics." She handed me a 1-page sheet with simple sentences I could actually say without sounding like I'd swallowed a statute book. "I don't sign anything without time to review. Please email the document to my counsel. I'll confirm details in writing, no decisions on the spot." "Not legal advice," she added, "just language that protects your oxygen." I showed her Dr. Patel's letter, the cream linen, the lavender seal, his careful handwriting, and told her about the church hall, the woman in scrubs, the envelope I watched change hands. Ava didn't flinch. "Cease and direct to Tiffany's agency today," she said. "No contact with you about capacity, no assessments without counsel, no third-party fishing, and a litigation hold. They're on notice to preserve texts, emails, and internal notes." She dictated. Her paralegal typed. And within the hour, a courier was on his way with letters that sounded like a door clicking shut. When Dr. Patel called on the prepaid phone, his voice carried the tiredness of a kind man who'd had enough. "Tiffany has been persistent," he admitted. She suggested language for my chart. I refused. That envelope was the best way I knew to slow the train. I thanked him for telling the truth out loud and asked for a short statement documenting the pressure. Nothing dramatic, just dates and who said what. He agreed. Back at the motel, I opened my notebook and drew thicker lines on the columns. When, who, what, evidence. I stapled the bank log and Ava's letters behind today's entries and taped a plastic sleeve to the inside cover for the linen note. I wrote Exhibit A on the sleeve in blue ink. Not because a judge would see it, maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't, but because names are anchors, and I needed something that didn't move. Harper texted after her shift. I pulled the dash cam. "Clean audio outside. Want me to drop a copy with your lawyer?" I said yes, and added her message to the ledger time. Number, link, then copied it by hand. Because a ledger written in your own letters sits differently in your bones. By late afternoon, Ava had set callback passwords on every account I counted. Utilities, pharmacy, the credit union where we kept the truck fund. "In person only for changes," she repeated. "With ID. And if anyone calls pretending to be you, they'll meet a script that ends with me." She smiled without sweetness. "Paper over performance, Elaine. That's our whole religion." I made tea in the motel mug and read my little sheet out loud until the words felt like mine. "I don't sign anything without time to review. Please email the document to my counsel. I'll confirm details in writing. No decisions on the spot. They weren't magic, but they built a small room inside my voice where I could sit down. Before dusk, I pressed the lavender seal flat one last time and slid the note into its sleeve. My phone buzzed with a new number. "We can stop by for a quick wellness check. Very friendly. Takes 10 minutes. I looked at the ledger, at the neat columns and the stapled proof, at the word exhibit reflecting the motel lamp. They have a script, I told myself, slipping on my cardigan. I have paper. Tonight, we would trade parts. The real estate office was colder than outside, the kind of air that keeps people alert and signatures tidy. I wasn't there to buy anything. I was there to look at a wall of framed listings and practice breathing like a person with choices. Then I heard Miles's laugh, the nervous one he uses when he's trying on a bigger life. He stood at a mahogany desk with a broker in a blue blazer, hands moving like he was conducting a small orchestra. "It's just a matter of paperwork," he said. "Temporary guardianship. We'll be able to move quickly once the court sees the situation." He didn't notice me yet. He was busy picturing my front porch in a listing description. "Excuse me," I said. "What situation?" Miles turned, color draining and then rushing back like a tide. "Elaine, great, perfect timing. We were actually going to loop you in." "Wonderful," I said. "Loop me." The broker looked between us and did that professional smile people learn to survive holidays with strangers. "Are you the homeowner?" he asked. "I am." I set my toad on the desk and took out my ledger, the cream linen envelope tucked inside its sleeve like a spine. The room steadied around me, and I've brought my memory. Miles recovered fast. He always has. "This is a courtesy visit," he told the broker. "Mom's situation requires some planning. We're just getting an appraisal, so we're ready when the guardianship—" "When the guardianship, what?" I asked. "Arrives like the mail?" He tried to meet my eyes and couldn't. "Everyone wants what's best for you. Then they'll love paper." I opened the ledger to today's date. "We won't be selling anything, appraising anything, or discussing anything that belongs to me until you produce a court order with my name on it and a judge's signature." "Do you have one?" "Right now?" He didn't. Of course he didn't. What he had was a fantasy he'd repeated so often it started to feel administrative. The broker cleared his throat. "If there's any legal uncertainty, we'll need to hit pause until it's clarified. Liability aside, it's our policy." "Clarify away," I said, and laid my phone on the desk, screen dark, recorder already running because I have learned to be ready. "Here's some context for your file. In watts to minute." The entrance bell chimed and turned into my favorite sound of the week, Ava's heels finding tile like a metronome. Ruth followed in her bank cardigan, hair pulled back, file folder hugged like a hymn book. They didn't plan the timing. They simply live near the center of my life now, and the center is where help tends to meet you. Ava slid a letter across the desk to the broker. "Counsel for Miss Mercer," she said. "We're placing you on notice that any discussion of sale, appraisal, or listing of her property without her expressed, written consent is inappropriate and potentially actionable. If anyone represents they have guardianship, you'll need certified orders, not promises." I really do and decry. Ruth set a thin stack beside it. "Activity logs from the bank," she said mildly, as if reading weather. "Multiple attempts to add a cosigner and change a mailing address, all denied. Notes attached. We will not honor instructions from anyone but the account holder, in person, with ID." She glanced at Miles with the clean kindness a gate has for a person who keeps pushing. "Just so everyone's clear." The broker's smile thinned, then settled into policy. "In that case," he said, turning to Miles, "I'll step back until the court paperwork is available." Miles's jaw worked. "The paperwork is coming." The doctor refused your script, I said, because if we were telling truths, I wanted the air to be crowded with them. "And since we're clarifying, I want the broker to hear this too." I opened my messages and hit play on the clip Harper had sent me the night before, the one she'd pulled from the dash cam outside the church hall. The audio wasn't cinematic. It was better. It was ordinary and unmistakable. Tiffany's voice, low and efficient. "We'll adjust her meds. She won't notice a small swap. Sleepier is easier. It reads as decline." A second voice, the assessor's, soft as a shrug. "If it's in the chart, we document what we see." The broker's hands went very still on the desk. He didn't look at me. He looked at policy, which is what conscientious people do when they sense a line they will not cross. "I'm sorry," he said, mostly to the room. "We won't be moving forward." Miles reached for righteous. "You can't just—" "I can," the broker said gently. "And I am." For a second, the office was quiet in that special way rooms get when people stop pretending at the same time. I took the cream linen envelope from its sleeve and set it on the desk beside the letters, the wax seal, flat and shining. "A doctor warned me not to go home." I listened. "Now I'm warning you. Stop trying to move my life using rumors and a pen. Enlisted dads. Enlisted dag lugdevidder her." Ava tapped the envelope twice with her fingertip, not for drama like a nurse checks a pulse. "Mr. Carter," she said to Miles, "we're also aware of communications with a financial consultant regarding potential proceeds from an unauthorized sale. Consider this your courtesy. Notice that we preserve everything. Texts, emails, calls. We'll subpoena if we must." He blustered, then deflated, then looked at the door like it might have a different outcome hidden on the other side. It didn't. Ruth laid a business card next to the ledger. "If anyone contacts this office about Elaine's accounts," she told the broker, "please direct them to me. I'll add your note to our file." "And them. And Juan." I gathered my things slowly. Slowness is a luxury and a message. I am not scrambling. You are. When I slid the envelope back into its sleeve, it felt less like a warning and more like a credential I'd earned. Outside, the light had that late afternoon honesty I've started to trust. Ava walked me to the curb. "Midpoint," she said, half smile. "This is where they pivot." "To what?" I asked, though my bones already knew. "Smear," she said. "If they can't sell your house, they'll try to sell a story about you." I looked back through the glass at Miles, smaller now without his imagined paperwork. "Let them," I said. "Stories don't scare me anymore." I brought my ledger. "It's not to." And because the day had one more use for the envelope, I pressed the lavender seal flat with my thumb and felt my anger sharpen into something clean. If they wanted a campaign, they were about to discover how unfriendly the facts could be. Smear campaigns don't start loud. They start like smoke under the door, just enough to sting your eyes so you bump into furniture you know by heart. The first curl was a post in the neighborhood group from Tiffany's personal account. "Checking in on our dear Elaine. Anyone else notice confusion lately? We're so worried. Resources welcome." There were hearts and praying hands, and one woman offering a casserole, because casseroles are what we do when we don't know what to do. By noon, a second post appeared from a different name but the same punctuation style, too many exclamation points, a fondness for ellipses. "Saw Elaine walking late, seemed lost." I wasn't lost. I was at the pharmacy buying pens that don't bleed. Ava called before I could decide whether to cry or laugh. "They've pivoted," she said. "We answer with documents, not feelings." She'd already booked 3 independent evaluations same week, different offices, short, fair, and boring on purpose. "We're not proving your worth," she added. "We're bottling their lie." Dr. Patel faxed a statement, plain as tap water. Cognitive screening within normal range, no concerns. Prior pressure from third parties to document decline. He kept it to dates and names, the way truth does when it doesn't need makeup. Miles, meanwhile, went for drama. He called the county hotline and said the words, "emergency guardianship," like if he stacked them close enough they would turn into a door. They didn't. The clerk asked for specifics. He offered adjectives. They asked for a physician's certification. He offered concern. The clerk logged the call and told him to seek counsel. He texted me afterward, "We're only trying to protect you." I added the message to my ledger, underlined "protect" once. That afternoon, the group thread found its rhythm. I thought Elaine repeated herself at bingo. She paid with cash. Her porch light was on. I could feel the story trying to harden around me like amber. So I did something small and stubborn. I wrote on the plastic sleeve around the linen envelope with a Sharpie. Not crazy careful, and tucked it back into my tote. Labels work both ways. Harper texted during her break. "You free? I have something you'll want." She swung by the motel with a USB drive and that look people get when they know the exact weight of what they're carrying. "Dashcam," she said. "Parking lot audio's clean." I grabbed the timestamp and the plate in case anyone pretends not to remember who was where. We watched it on my motel TV, the sound running through a speaker that made everything a little too honest. Tiffany in the blue blazer, the assessor from the church hall, the envelope I'd glimpsed, passing hands against the wash of car lights. And then Tiffany's voice, flat as a memo. "We'd be grateful if you could do the home visit tonight. Friendly, quick." The answer, "Cash is fine. Just text me the bullet points you want documented." I didn't feel vindicated. I felt oriented. The room turned back into a room with corners that made sense. I called Ava. "I'm bringing it," I said, "and I'm done defending myself in the comments." "Good," she answered. "We're filing an injunction tonight, no contact, no assessments, preserve everything. Send me the file and I'll have our tech pull the metadata and hash. We'll treat it like evidence because it is." Before I left, I slid a note card into my wallet, a little card Ava had printed for me in her tidy font. 7 questions before you sign. I read them out loud until they felt like mine. Who asked for this and why on the record? What changes after I sign specifically? Where will this be stored and who can use it? When did I receive this? Do I have time to review? Which rights do I keep and which do I give away? How can I revoke it exactly? Who benefits if I sign today and if I don't? Not legal advice, just a spine from my mouth. By evening, Ava had filed the motion. Dr. Patel's statement sat behind it like a good chair. The 3 independent evals were booked. Ruth added a note to my accounts. No third-party wellness charges accepted. In person only. Harper hand-delivered the drive to Ava's office and texted me a thumbs-up selfie with the receptionist because sometimes justice needs a little levity to breathe. I drove past my house on purpose, slow enough to see the porch light I love and the shadow of a man on his phone pacing the sidewalk. Miles didn't look up. I didn't stop. I was busy collecting. People kept posting. People always do. But I learned something in that wave. I don't need them to believe me. I need them to look. Nights in motels have a particular kind of silence. It isn't peace. It's the pause between 2 thoughts. The air unit rattled itself tired, then settled into a low hum that made the room feel like a waiting room for the rest of my life. I set the tote on the round table, took out the ledger, and then, because I needed something softer than lines and ink, I pulled the cream linen envelope free and laid it flat like a photograph. I made tea in the little plastic kettle and sat on the edge of the bed with my knees together like I was at a clinic waiting for my name. I kept thinking about the ways I have trained myself to be easy. The apologetic smile, the habit of bringing muffins to conversations where other people bring demands, the way I fill silence so no one else has to. You can live an entire life like that. You can die like that too. I don't know when I started believing that being agreeable kept people safe. Maybe it was the ICU years, where calm voices hold rooms together while the beeps argue with themselves. Maybe it was taking care of my husband 2 years of morphine schedules and whispered promises to a man whose hands still smelled like sawdust. After he died, I kept the calm like a widow keeps his flannels, because it felt like loyalty. Somewhere along the way, I turned loyalty into a job title, peacemaker, smoother, family glue, and forgot that glue is not supposed to be the house. I stood and caught my own eye in the cheap mirror over the dresser. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It was plain, stubborn recognition. "You are not confused," I told the woman looking back. "You are careful. There's a difference." My voice sounded older than I feel and steadier than I've been. On the table, the ledger waited. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "Inner rules, because external rules only work if you have internal ones to honor them." I wrote, "No proving. I don't audition for my own life. No secret meetings. If it matters, it gets witnesses. No love without limits. Boundaries are how love survives." Then I took a small frame from my suitcase, a travel thing I used to use for a photo of my husband sanding an armrest on our porch, and slid the note from Dr. Patel behind the glass. The lavender seal, flattened and mended with a strip of tape, looked like a bruise healing. I set it on the nightstand, warning into compass. I touched the glass with 2 fingers, the way you do at museum cases when something inside changes you more than you expected. I heard my husband's voice in the gravel of memory. "Don't stay in a burning room just because you named it home." Back when he said it, we were talking about a faulty space heater that scorched an outlet. Tonight, the line came back with a different kind of heat. I started a list titled, "If I leave, I choose." I sell on my terms, when paperwork is clean and my breath is slow. I pick a smaller place where light lands on the breakfast table by 9. I bring the porch with me, maybe just the chair, maybe just the habit of sitting in mourning. I keep my name on every document that bears my life. It did something to my spine to see those sentences in my handwriting. A woman could start over from sentences like that. My phone buzzed with another message shaped like concern and spelled like control. I didn't open it. I wrote, "Noise is not equal to truth" in the margin and underlined it twice. Then I closed the ledger and said, Out loud, the sentence I needed to become true. I don't have to prove I deserve to stay. I will choose where I belong. The air unit hiccuped, clicked off, and the sudden quiet felt like a curtain lifting. Somewhere beyond the parking lot, a train sounded its long, low note. I slid under the covers and watched the framed note glow in the lamplight, small, square, sufficient. Morning would bring phone calls and forms, and someone's fresh story about me. That was fine. I'd already chosen mine. Courthouses have their own weather. Even on bright days, the hallways feel overcast, like the building remembers every storm anyone ever carried inside it. I sat on a bench with Ava and watched people pass, couples with clasped hands, men with files tucked under arms like shields, one woman whispering into a phone with the concentration of a surgeon. I had my tote on my lap and the framed note inside, the lavender seal flattened under glass. I touched it once, quick, like a pulse check. They called my case, and the room arranged itself into roles. Petitioner's table for Miles and Tiffany with their lawyer, respondent's table for me and Ava, a clerk who could sort the world with a stamp, a judge with a face that didn't broadcast. I stood when they said my name. I sat when they asked me to. Tiffany went first. She was soft-voiced and luminous with worry. If you didn't know her, you'd want to hug her and ask for casserole instructions. She spoke about subtle decline and wandering and repeating stories, the way a person might describe a weather pattern, gentle, inevitable, nobody's fault. Miles followed, reading from a spiral notebook he called a memory log, late bills, misplaced keys, lights left on, 3 different retellings of the same anecdote. He glanced at me on the line about unsafe driving, and I thought of the way he forgets to return my gas card. Ava didn't interrupt. She let the performance land where it would, then stood with a stack of folders that weren't dramatic until you understood what they were. "For the court," she said, "we've prepared a narrow record, not a biography, just the week the petitioners describe." She handed up Dr. Patel's letter, dates, screenings, normal ranges, and a line about third-party pressure to characterize cognitive decline. The judge read it without changing expression. Ava handed up bank activity logs with Ruth's initials, attempted cosigner ad, address change request, POA inquiry, each time-stamped, each denied, each routed to manager only. She handed up my pharmacy record, no sedating medication changes, no dosage adjustments, no new prescriptions that would explain sleepiness. She handed up 3 scheduled evaluation appointments with independent clinicians, none of whom take referrals from Tiffany's agency. The court clerk stamped each one like a heartbeat. Then Ava opened a slim case and removed a drive. "Finally," she said, "a recording from a neighborhood parking lot, produced by a third party. We've hashed the file and preserved metadata. The court will hear 2 voices." She summarized instead of playing it in full, which somehow made it heavier. "A home visit tonight. Friendly. Quick. Cash is fine. Text me the bullet points you want documented." She didn't look at Tiffany while she spoke. She looked at the judge like she expected to be understood. Tiffany's lawyer objected. "Unreliable. Out of context." Ava nodded, polite. "Context is why we brought 5 days of it." The judge asked me to speak. I stood, palms smooth on the rail. "I'm not confused," I said. "I'm careful. I left my house because my doctor asked me to take time and gather proof. I've kept a log. I've asked for witnesses. I'm not angry at the idea of care. I'm asking that care not be used as a lock." I didn't say much more. I didn't need to. Ava handed up copies of my ledger pages for that week, the when, who, what, evidence columns, not because they were dramatic, but because they were boring in the way truth likes to be. The judge leaned back, temple resting on 2 fingers, and let the room breathe. Then she spoke in the tone of a person closing a door without slamming it. "Emergency guardianship is an extraordinary remedy. On this record, it is not warranted." She denied the petition, ordered that no wellness assessments occur without my written consent and counsel present, and directed both parties to preserve communications. Then, in a quieter voice, she added that certain allegations concerning inducement and documentation practices would be referred for review. She signed an order limiting contact to counsel for the next 30 days. It wasn't victory music. It was the sound of a floor holding. I sat and felt my bones settle back into me. On our way out, I touched the glass over the linen note through the fabric of my tote and let myself breathe in 4s and 6s the way I taught anxious families in the ICU. The hallway brightened. The building's weather shifted a degree. I thought that was the end of the day until Ava stopped short by the clerk's window and asked to see the attachments to a notice the other side had filed last night. The clerk slid a packet under the glass. On the second page, a name I didn't know sat neat as a signature beside the word consultant, a phone number tucked underneath like a root. P. Larkin. It wasn't a storm yet. It was the shape of one, forming. Names can be nothing, or they can be keys. P. Larkin looked like nothing on the attachment. 2 tidy initials and a number tucked under consultant. Ava said, "Let's pull the thread." And that's what we did. Ruth called in a favor at the bank and found an old file from my husband's accounts, back when he was getting advice about retirement ladders and whether to buy the cherrywood planer he wanted. Different institution, same town. The advisor listed back then? Paul Larkin. Not a coincidence, just a road that doubled back without telling me. Ava sent a preservation letter to the number on the notice and, because she is a polite hammer, left a voicemail that sounded like fresh paper being stacked. "We're preserving all communications regarding Miss Mercer's property, evaluations, and any arrangement contingent on a sale." Within an hour, an email arrived from a burner address that wasn't as clever as it thought. The subject line read, "Timing." Inside, one sentence and a sloppily redacted PDF. As discussed, my fee is 6% of net proceeds upon close, followed by a skim of emails between Larkin and a broker I recognized from the office where Miles had been rehearsing my listing. Ava's mouth thinned. "Kickback," she said, not loudly, not alleged, written. "We printed everything. The pages came out warm, ink still shining. I took the cream linen envelope from my tote and set it next to the stack so the wax seal touched the corner of Larkin's PDF. Warning: meet motive. I photographed them side by side for my ledger, not for the internet, not for outrage, just to show myself that cause and effect can sometimes sit on the same table. Dr. Patel called on the prepaid phone I keep for my circle of calm. "There's something you should know," he said, voice lower than usual. "Larkin contacted me last month. Said he was consulting and wanted clarity in the chart to prevent future liability. He used legal words like a man shaking a stick at a fence. I told him no. He said he'd recommend a second opinion." Patel paused. "I'm not proud of this, but I let that comment live in my head too long. The envelope was my apology for waiting. As candidates, that envelope saved me time," I told him. "Time is oxygen." Ava drafted a brief for the district attorney before dinner. Keep it simple. Keep it provable. Attempted interference with medical documentation, financial inducement contingent on a sale, and coordination with parties seeking control of an elder's assets. No summer novel. Just dates, names, attachments, and a request for an investigator who knows the difference between compassion and a cover story. At 9, Larkin called Ava back himself, sounding like a man who believes the right tone can erase a sentence already written. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "Standard consulting fee if the family transitions the property responsibly. I was trying to ensure continuity of care." "Continuity of care doesn't pay 6%, Ava said, crisp as a snapped twig. "Preserve your devices. We'll be in touch." I sat with the stack and felt the kind of anger that doesn't yell. It sorts, it labels, it writes the names of men who turn kindness into a business model and then bill it like a service. I slid the PDF into a plastic sleeve behind the framed note. "Warning becomes map," I wrote under it. "I think better when my pen touches paper." Before bed, I called Harper to thank her again for the dash cam. She laughed like a person who has learned to ride out storms by naming them. "They always pay someone," she said. "They think paying makes it clean." After we hung up, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. A man's voice, friendly in that way that means the opposite. "Tell Miles we need Friday. Next Friday, or else." He didn't leave a name. He didn't need to. I added a new line in the ledger, unknown caller, next Friday, or else. Then I underlined why 3 times. I had the network, the fee, the attempted pressure on the chart. There was still one missing piece. What could make a son go this far? I didn't have the answer yet. I had the shape of one, forming. The second twist didn't arrive as a confession. It arrived as a bill that didn't match any month I've ever lived through. The caller ID was a city 2 hours east. The voice was patient in the way a fire waits. "Tell Miles we do Fridays," he said, like we were old friends with a standing appointment. "Next Friday, or else." He didn't ask for me. He assumed I was a message board. Ava didn't blink. "Debts?" she said, the way meteorologists say pressure. She filed an addendum with the DA, and before breakfast, we had a quiet answer from a detective who has seen every version of family. Gambling markers, cash advances, a trail of extensions that weren't extensions so much as oxygen on loan. It wasn't an excuse for anything Miles had done, but it was a key that fit the lock on his hurry. Tiffany's part didn't surprise me either. Not once I'd seen the emails with Larkin. She wasn't content to be pulled along by bad luck. She'd made terms with it. In one thread Ava pulled from the broker's files, Tiffany wrote about aligning incentives and participation on the management side if the sale transitioned smoothly. Not shares in my grief, shares in a care home she wanted to expand. Guardianship as a business plan. The kind of sentence that makes your mouth taste like pennies. Court, day 2. The same gray light in the hallway, the same stamp that could sort the world. Harper took the stand first, palms steady, voice unadorned. She told the judge what she saw at the church hall and what her dashcam heard in the parking lot. She said, "Cash is fine," without raising her eyebrows, and let the words do their own work. Ruth followed, specific as a map. Dates, times, who asked for what at the bank, what was denied, why. No adjectives, just policy like a backbone. Dr. Patel came last. He kept his voice small and true. He said he had been pressured to write a story that wasn't his to write, and that he would not be doing that. He said he wrote a note because sometimes the fastest way to save a life is to slow it down. Ava didn't grandstand. She lined up paper and let it hold. When it was my turn, I didn't say much, only that I wanted care that didn't use love as a leash. That I'd kept a ledger not to prove I was worthy, but to prove what happened. I looked at Miles for a second and saw the boy I met when he was already too old to ask for help without disguising it. Then I looked at the judge and breathed. "Petition denied," she said, not unkindly, and wrote in the thick blue pen judges use when they mean it. "No assessments without respondents' written consent and counsel present. No contact except through counsel for 30 days. Certain matters are referred to the district attorney for review." She didn't list them. She didn't have to. We all knew which ones glowed. Outside, the day felt wider by a foot. Ava squeezed my shoulder. "Now we make your life quiet," she said. The order was barely dry when she filed a notice to the broker, the agency, the consultant. Ruth locked down my accounts with a second layer, in-person, ID, and a callback to a code phrase only I would know. I left the courthouse and didn't go home. I drove to a small building downtown with a mailbox shaped like a house and signed a lease for an apartment with morning windows. Before I moved a single box, I hired a property manager for my place 90-day hold. No showings, no exceptions, no keys leaving a lockbox I controlled. It wasn't surrender. It was stewardship. If my home was going to change, it would change in my handwriting. The first night in the new apartment, I hung the framed note above a little table by the door. The lavender seal, still flattened under glass, caught evening light like a bruise turning to a story you can tell without flinching. Under it, I set my ledger and a mason jar with a paper label. Not crazy, careful. I dropped in $20 and texted Harper. "Workshop? Family Incident Log 101? I'll bring tea." She replied with 3 check marks and a heart that didn't feel like performance. Before bed, I copied the front page of my ledger into a fresh notebook, the one I plan to hand people who find me because someone tried to make them small. 10 simple lines, not legal advice, not a sermon, just the bones of how I kept my feet. Date and time, written the minute you can. Who was present? Real names if you have them. What was said, quotes if you remember them. What was asked of you, exact language. What you answered, keep it short. Any document mentioned title, version, where it came from. Any pressure, money offered, favors promised, threats, where it happened, address, room, camera locations. What you did next, calls made, emails sent, witnesses looped. Where the evidence lives, file name. Backup. A second pair of eyes. It isn't a shield against everything. It's a door you can choose to stand in. I slept for 4 hours without waking. In the morning, the sun landed on the table by 9, exactly like I promised myself it would. I brewed coffee and read the order again, letting the words "petition denied" mean what they mean. The phone buzzed with noise I didn't need to let in. I turned it face down and looked at the framed note. "I didn't run away," I said, into a room that already knew me. I ran toward proof. If you need a sentence to start with, take mine. No, today protects your tomorrow. Here's what this story taught me, in one clean line. Kindness needs boundaries, or it turns into permission. And another, I didn't run away. I ran toward proof. When family pressure rises, choose steady over noisy. Think of the linen envelope on Elaine's table, not a threat, a compass. Proof is quiet paper, dates, names, what was asked, what you answered. Boundaries aren't a wall, they're a door that only opens when you're present. If you've ever enabled out of love, you're not bad, you were trying to keep the peace. Now you can keep your peace. Doable actions start tonight. Write 3 rules on a card you'll see daily. No surprise paperwork. Witnesses for anything important. Love with limits. Call your bank, utility, to add a verbal password and mark in-person ID for changes only. Start a family incident log, 4 columns. When, who, what, evidence. Add 1 entry this week. Practice 3. See, calm, collect, confirm. With 2 phrases, please email this to my counsel. I don't decide on the spot. Save the 7 questions before you sign in your phone notes and read them before any form. These tools are for clarity and safety, not revenge. This is not legal advice. If you need help, speak with a professional in your area. If this resonated, drop 1 sentence you'll tell yourself on a weekday. Mine is, "No, today protects your tomorrow." And download the 1-page family incident log checklist in the description. Subscribe to follow our next workshop on turning receipts into relief. Whatever you're facing, may tonight be steady, and tomorrow's light find your table and your boundaries exactly where you chose them.